What's going on, Illumineers, and welcome back to the Madhouse. And today we have some deck lists for you as we look at 11 of the top 16 deck lists that were at the European Championships. We don't have the last 5. They haven't been posted. Unfortunately, Europe, they use paper deck lists, so it's a little bit harder to get them. With that being said, to you 11 that have shared your lists, thank you so much, because now you have given us all an opportunity to kind of take from your spice what you did and curtail it to what we want to do. It lets us recognize the meta as we go into the CCS 8K that's happening this upcoming weekend, but also as we prepare for the NA Continentals to try and get that world invite, to try and get another shot at the Mickeys, the Baymaxes, all of that great stuff. But with that, let's jump into some of the stats really quick. Let's look at what the meta has showed us. Now, remember, this is the European meta, and sometimes that European meta differs quite a bit from the NA meta, but it's still a meta. It's the only real stats that we have so far. So looking at this, when you look at these slashes, what you see over here, for example, 32 is what showed up on day 1, and then over here is what showed up on day 2. Now, this is rough math because they didn't post the actual numbers, but when you look at, they just posted percentages. So if you took the percentage into the total number, it gave you something like 32.4%. So it could be that we had 33 people. It could be that we had 32 people. It's hard to say. So this is a rough estimate, but with that, things to note. Red Blue had an awful rate of change going from day 1 to day 2. SteelSong, Emerald Steel, awful, but not as bad as Sapphire Steel. That Blue Steel, they're suffering. But what did really well? Well, Purple did really well. When we look at 96 Illumineers and we look at top 16, of those top 16, we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of the top 16 decks were purple. Now, sure, that's kind of be expected, but what made the change? Well, we have things like Genie, and Genie just doing phenomenal things, questing for 2, that 2/4/2 body that draws a card, it replaces itself, just a really good card. When we look at 32 and 3, when you have so much purple, it's just really hard for Ruby Sapphire to shine when purple is something that's really good into it. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of these decks, so the Purple Steel, the Amethyst Emerald, they're lower to the ground, so they're just questing for a lot before Ruby Sapphire can get going. And then also, day 1 is best of 2. So when you have 20 of the total, 20, 26, 29 of 96 decks are purple, plus 32 Ruby Sapphire, you're going to have a hard time getting those 2 O's. And if all you do is 2 O's, or if all you do is draw the whole day, that's not enough. And if you take one loss, we saw people go 3-1-3 that didn't make day 2. So what ends up happening, I would imagine for a lot of these Ruby Sapphire players, is they placed a lot of mirrors. They just had a whole lot of draws throughout the day. And unfortunately, that's just not going to cut the cheese, so to speak. I'd imagine when you look at these Ruby Sapphire players, if they had any 2 O's, it was most likely against some of these Amber Steel players, which is just the unfortunate, thing. But Emerald Steel didn't quite show up, but we've seen that Emerald Steel normally isn't as popular overseas as it is in America, so we'll kind of see what happens at NA Continentals. But looking at this, Amethyst Steel had the best rate of day 1 to day 2. 3 showed up on day 1 and 2 made it to day 2. Not only that, but 2 of them that made it to day 2, the 2, also made top 8. And then Ruby Amethyst, of course, 3 of them making day 2, and 3 of them made top 4, and 1 of them winning it, of course. So just a good meta. It's cool to see that we have a lot of stuff going on, but purple is definitely shining through. Purple is really representing what we have, but it's really cool to see that we kind of have, there's just a lot going on here, and we have a very diverse meta, and still lots of opportunity for things to really come in and see what's up now that we have these numbers. But let's jump in to the actual deck list. So that's not a deck list. This is a deck list. We have Domingo, the gentleman who won the whole event. He won the whole enchilada. He brought purple red, ruby amethyst, and the deck that's dead, right? You guys are the absolute worst, the doom and gloom. Your deck's always dead, but what happens? You come in, you win these events, you take home the Mickeys, you take home the Enchanteds, the Binders, and you just represent. Really good deck. It's kind of the staple red purple. Not a lot of difference here. Not a lot of things have changed other than mostly the bell. And we'll talk about bell because when you look at all these purple decks, you'll see that I think all 11 deck lists we look at, or of the 11, all the purple decks have bell in it. I could be wrong, but we'll see. But we have the 2 and 2 for the ladies. But looking at this, the stars of the show, of course, the bell, she's just so good in this meta because the big thing is the Genie Wars, and Belle just comes in to win that for you. If you play the Genie first, they play the Genie second, and eventually you trade into their Genie, then you play a Belle to move the 2 damage from your Genie to their Genie, and then because of that, their Genie dies, and you have a full health Genie, or banished. Nothing dies in Lorcana. But there's just so many opportunities. You have Elsa that's a 2/5, so she gets 4 damage on her. Then you just use Belle to move up to 3 damage to something else. And the opportunities with Belle are so good. And then let's not forget she's a 4/4/2 inkable. So if you don't need her, you can ink her. She doesn't die to Brawl, Medusa. She doesn't get banished by the big Sisu. She trades into Hand Sisu. She trades into Tremaine, Medusa. She's just an overwhelmingly good card in this meta. Of course, the Genie. You'll see Genie in every single purple deck. It's such a 2/4/2 that replaces itself and evasive. It's a $35 foil rare. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how good it is, I don't know what will. And then, of course, Tremaine just did wonders. You saw her do so well in the finals. Don't forget that this Tremaine is a shift 4, okay? So people forget that you can shift onto a shift character, or you can shift the same character onto itself. So you can play a Tremaine, right, for 6, and then the next turn, you can shift another Tremaine for 4, and then you most likely will get to 7 ink. So then you can bounce both of them back to your hand with a fox, or bounce both of them back to your hand with a snake, and then you have 2 more Tremaines on board, and that is just overwhelmingly powerful because you can quest for 2, shift the Tremaine, make them banish something, bounce it back to your hand with a fox or the snake, and then maybe banish something with the fox, or if not, you just have a 4/3 body on board or a 3/3 body on board, and that's really, really good when you just need removal. And then, of course, the Sisu just continues to do work. When we talk about Genie Wars in this 2-body here, and then we look at the Rabbit that's a 2-body and the Elsa that's a 2-body, this Sisu comes in just decimating the field really, really well. And then coming down on 6 is so powerful because there's not a lot that anyone can do to deal with Sisu. So if Green Purple plays an Ursula 2-drop, hoping it be prep, and then they see that you have a Sisu empowered sibling, there's now a timer because they can't do anything to remove your hand Sisu if you have it on the field. There's just nothing as long as you don't quest. So we saw that this Sisu comes in doing a lot of work. She quests for 3. She trades into Mauis. She trades into Foxes. Really, really powerful card that put in a lot of work. So really good job, Domingo. Way to represent Jund, the purple red. Way to really bring it home. And congratulations on first place and best of luck at Worlds. Next up, though, we have Michaela. Oh, crap. I messed it up. Man, I even watched the stream so that I could try and pronounce your name right. It might be Michaela. I apologize if I'm wrong and I'm adding an extra letter in there, but let's look at your deck. First off, you took second place. You came in, you represented, you kicked butt, and you really showed everyone the Green Purple is here to rock and roll. And looking at the list, well, let's just jump into this because this highlights it better than I can. What's the big 15 at the top? That is 15 1-drops. 15 1-drops. And we saw what happens when you have these 15 1-drops. That's turn 1, you play a 1-drop. Turn 2, you can play 2 1-drops. Turn 3, you can play 3 1-drops because you just have so many. And then that Chernobog's replaces itself. The Magic Broom replaces itself. The Diablo replaces itself. It's just so good. Over here, I have the Clarabelle with an X because this green-purple list didn't run any Clarabelles. And he just decided it just wasn't worth it. I didn't need the one-drop Clarabelle. I wanted the cantrips. I didn't want, this 5/6 quest for 2 because like I just don't need it. It becomes slow. I'd rather do other things on turn 5. But we did see the Ursula. And I don't think we ever saw Ursula get played in the finals. I did miss parts of it, but it's just a strong card. It comes down, it quests for 3, and it has a really big butt. So it's really hard to deal with. It's effective against SteelSong if you can get to the point that it matters. So it's just a big body that's hard to deal with. It quests for 3, and you can exert their other player, which is really good as well. And then of course we see the one Peter Pan, and you're gonna see this in quite a few of the purple decks because Peter Pan can answer the the genies as well as the Diablos. And what I mean by Peter Pan can answer genie is he's a 2/3, so he doesn't get banished when he trades into genie. But for 6, you can play Crab plus Peter Pan to answer the genie, and he lives to tell the tale. So just a good card. You don't see a whole lot of them. I think we see the max of 2 in one of the purple decks, but just a card that answers that genie very well and does a good job. So it is unfortunate that he's uninkable, but that's just a risk you're willing to take. And when you look at his list, 4, 5, 6, 10, 13, only 13 uninkables anyways. And when you have this much draw, you're normally not going to brick anyway. So just a great deck. We do see the one Bell again. Just a really good deck. There's a reason he made, second place. So really good job. Really proud of you. Really happy for you. And way to represent EA Tempo. So good job, man. Next up, we have Swandai. Okay, he's on Purple Steel, and he brought in a very spicy Purple Steel list that people were really excited for because he came in rocking this Hades. This Hades is a 3/4, 3/6 cost uninkable. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your characters is banished, you gain 2 lore. And ladies and gentlemen, if you remember at the very beginning of this video, there were 32 red-blue players that showed up to this event. So he did say on, I believe, the 20 Lore Discord that Hades came in more than you might think with only 1. Because you play Hades, and if you just have 2 characters on board, for example, the finals match, not finals, but the top 16 match when he was against Reese playing red-blue, he had 2 characters on board plus Hades. Reese had no choice but to play, I believe it was B-Prep. So Hades triggers his effect. So Swandai gained 4 lore off of that. And it did really well into a very heavy red-blue meta. It's just a really powerful card when you have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of mass removal. Other things to note is that he's on 3 of these Calhouns, the resist +1, the 3/2/1, but when you banish an opponent's character on your turn, you gain 2 lore. So when you're in a really heavy purple meta and they have a lot of cantrips or green-purple meta, this Calhoun comes down and your opponent now is kind of afraid to quest because Calhoun is just going to gain you 2 lore and most likely live to tell a story, right? So Calhoun, just a really incredibly annoying card to deal with and something that does a lot of good stuff for Steel. It just slows the game down and for you to be able to come out and do what you want to do. No Maleficent biding her times, and you'll notice in the next Purple Steel list that I show that there's no Maleficent biding your time. I've been saying this for a long time. It is an awful card in Purple Steel. It just doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't deserve a place in Purple Steel. It does nothing that Purple Steel is trying to accomplish. And we really saw that in the 2 Purple Steel lists that made top 8, not running Maleficent biding her time. But then we look at these wonderful Steel removal cards. We had 2 Zeus, 3 Fire the Cannons, and 2 Smash. Swandai did say that he 2-0'd 2 SteelSong lists. One was a SteelSong aggro, one was a traditional SteelSong. And you can guarantee that these Fire the Cannons, the smashes, they probably came in and did a lot of work. Fire the Cannons answering the shift targets, the smashes answering the aerials, the Gastons, anything else you really wanted to, and just did wonderful things. And these are the things that help you beat SteelSong. I can't stress that enough. Like, these cards right here are what do it for you. This Fire the Cannons is what does it for you, trying to make it to where you can get a board before they get their singers down. Because a purple deck with no board is nothing. We do see the 2 bells coming in, only 2 crabs, but when you run all these damage actions, you don't really need a whole lot of crabs because you have damage this way. So just a really good list. We got the Spice with the Hades coming in, questing for 3 if he does live, if you wanted to do that, and taking top 8 for a reason. So really good job with the 2-0 and top 16 against Red Blue, and really good job making top 8. Next up, we have Andy with another purple steel list, but what's really exciting about this is just how different this purple steel list is from the other one. This is night and day purple steel, because when we look at this thing, I mean, 15 1-drops again, even with the Captain Hooks coming in, you got 15 1-drops. You've got the 3 docks coming in, so trying to refill your hand that way. And the other purple steel list had no docks. You have 2 Gantus coming in, that 4/3/4. Just lay this card down, answer it, or I'm gaining 4 lore. It's a scary card. You have the 4 baby Tinkerbells, the 1/3/2s, and then of course the Tinkerbell shift line, which you don't see a lot of either. And so this deck comes in and it's just ready to rock and roll, and it can do so much because when we look at it, you have your goats, you have your roses. These Tinkerbells plus genies are questing for 2 each. This deck is like the true definition of tempo of just, I'm going to play some stuff and I'm just going to keep questing and doing my thing, and you're going to have to respond or you will lose. So it is a more aggro list, but again, not running the Maleficent biding her times because she is an awful, awful card in purple steel. Now the songs or the actions are a little bit different because we do see the 1 Strength of a Raging Fire instead of the 2 Zeuses that the other list was running, but we do see the 3 Fire the Cannons. We do see the 2 Smashes coming in and just doing, again, really good work into SteelSong, into the other purple steel lists. Just really good work into everyone. And one of the nice things about this is if you know you're going to be playing against a lot of other purple steel, this Captain Hook comes in and answers that Calhoun very, very well. So just a strong list, really good list. There's a reason he made top 8, and I'd imagine that a lot of players just weren't expecting so much early questing of going 1-drop into maybe a Smee. So if you go Captain Hook into Smee, into Tinkerbell, into Genie, into Gantu, that is just a lot of lore immediately coming in really. And if they get a big board, then you can play Tinkerbell Shift and then clear their board. Just, such a really fun tempo, strong tempo deck coming in and making top 8. Really good job. So next up, we have Kiyoshi, top 16. This is also, I might be wrong, and I apologize, but I believe this is Reese, who normally plays red-purple, but instead he came in with this super spicy red-purple look-alike in the form of red-blue. And when you look at this list, what do you see? A Flynn package, right? And he came into this meta expecting there to be a lot of red-blue, and boy was he right, because he decimated the red-blue. So he ended up going and getting first seed with this list that a lot of people just weren't happy with, but yeah, who cares? Because he made top seed for a reason. And looking at this list, like, it is spicy. There's just a lot of stuff that you'd expect to see in a red-blue list that isn't there. There's a lot of stuff you wouldn't expect to see that is there. And this is something he said on 20 Lore. Like, someone, I believe it was Ed, was like, "Hey, why are you running red-blue in a red-purple shell?" And he's like, "Because McDuck Manor has 9 health, and McDuck Manor questing or gaining you 2 lore every turn that's going to really add up. And 9 health is really, really hard to deal with. But looking at this, what are the things that come out? We have the Flynn package, of course. The Queen of Hearts, just really surprising people because it hasn't been seen for a long time. So now when you play the Queen of Hearts, answering the Curse Merfolks, answering, the shift lines and SteelSong, just doing really well. And one of the things that, Red Blue notoriously suffers with is losing the aggro or those aggro decks. So Pirate's Life coming in here with 3 on top of 3 Maui Sharks gives you a really good opportunity to gain 3 lore per turn if you have Maui Shark on the field, but also make it to where they're losing 2 lore per turn. So really cool list. He did lose. It was unfortunate that his first matchup on day 2 was probably against his biggest counter, being Purple Steel. So it is what it is. It happened. It's unfortunate, but really spicy list that I do expect you might see at your local metas where people just like playing something spicy. And it's a strong list. It really is. It is, it's just doing really goofy things that you wouldn't expect. We only see the 4 Hirams and the 4 items, but he said it wasn't a big issue. It didn't come down, it didn't matter a whole lot because you still have their visions, you still have how far I'll go and the Grandma Talas. And so I could see how it could just work really. Of course, Sail the Azurite Sea. So really good job, man. Way to bring in something spicy and just completely decimate on day 1. Really good job. So looking at, we said number 1 seed. That's what that is. That was number 1 seed going into day 2. So next we have Gabriel, another green purple in top 16. And when you look at his list, we have a couple different cards because we have the Cricky coming in. And this is something that we didn't see in the other green purple list. But again, Cricky is something that you see, or when this comes down, you just might not expect it because maybe they only have these 1-drops down. You're like, oh, I'm not worried about that. And then they play a Cricky and they can now trade into everything that you have. And we have the Bonsai. He came in with 4 Bonsais and no snakes. So the Bonsai just really good into red-blue. So I'm sure that he was really happy with this choice when he saw how many red-blue players there were. We see another Bell coming in. Also, this green-purple list running 4 friends on the other side to draw. So just a good list. Again, no Clarabelles, all right? No Clarabelles, but the 1 Ursula, again, just good into SteelSong, but also just a big butt that doesn't die very easily because it's a 4 attack, 7 health. So just a good card. But again, he's got the 4 crabs, so he's trading into pretty much anything he wants along with the Cricky. Good list. Really like to see it. Good job making top 16. Next up, we have here I had number 2 because he was number 2 on going into day 2. He was the number 2 seed, I believe. So couple mistakes on my part. We'll ignore those. Moving on. All right. And here I goofed it up again. All right. So we have Caillou. He was number 3 going into day 2. He's the number 3 seed, but I believe he stopped at top 16. And when you look at his list, very different than the other red-blue in top 16 because there is no Flynn Sisu package here. This is more your typical red-blue. We have 1 Lucky Dime. We have the crabs, the Sisus. But when you look at this list, we have the 3 Maui Sharks. We have only the 1 B-Prep. And what is this number 1? I put that there because I wanted to just highlight. This kind of goes off of what Sailor was doing at the very start, and we just have a lot of 1-ups. One of Hideaway, I believe that's called. 1 of Let It Go, B-Prep, Lucky Dime, Great Stone Dragon, Vitalosphere. Lots of 1-drops, and we can do that because of Maui Half Shark. He comes down, he starts questing, banishing characters, one or the other, and he's bringing back these cards so you can use them again if they did get discarded. And so you used a B-Prep earlier in the game, but you need another Let It Go, so your Maui brings those back for you. And just a good, red-blue, typical red-blue list that is running, the 4 Sisus, the 1 B-Prep, but just doing the nasty red-blue things. No Fishbone Quill because they seem to have gone away from that, but the one Great Stone Dragon. And this, I still think this is a pretty good card. If a lot of people think that it's too slow, and it might be, so, but it is inkable. It is going to be something different into the mirrors, and I'm sure that he really liked this into the mirrors on day one where there were so many, because it's just an endless amount of ink. So moving on though, we have LD, as he's called, Lorcana Decklist, LD as he's called on 20 Lore Discord, with green purple again. And let's talk about the spice in this one. We have Don Carnegie. He is a 4/4/2 evasive 5-cost inkable. And this was something that LD was pretty excited about. And he put this in there because he knew that there was going to be a lot of genies. He knew that there was going to be a lot of red-blue. So Don comes in as a 4/4/2. It answers the genies. It answers red-blue's removal in the case of Maui can't rush into it. You really just need B prep. B prep's the only thing that takes out Don Carnegie, and that's going to be really rough. Okay, so this guy, he just comes down, he starts questing for 2. It makes your opponent potentially use a B prep they don't want to use. So I'm sure it did a lot of work for him. And then of course, the only green purple list also running Mother Knows Best. Return chosen character to their player's hand. So, and this is just annoying disruption. And you know, when you run this along with the 4 Cloud Kickers, along with the 4 Ursulas, you're just being really, really, really annoying for your opponent to deal with. But when we look at this list, we also have 4, 8, 12, 15 1-drops. Again, we have the Pegasus. So that Pegasus with the crab answers genies. So that has to be respected a lot. So you can get some early questing in with Pegasus against other green decks or purple decks. And then when they play genie, you're just like, okay, well, I have a crab in my hand, so I will answer your genie as soon as you quest with it. And that has to feel pretty good because also it's just an inkable evasive that just quests every turn to gain you lore. So really good job making top 16 with a very different and spicy green-purple list that also is not running friends because you're running 4 genies and 4 rabbits. So I'm sure draw was never an issue for you. So next up on the list, we have Pupkin running, again, green-purple. Ladies and gentlemen, green-purple came in and kicked butt. And when we look at this list, again, this one's very different. And all of these green-purple lists, just different. There's a lot of ways to build these because this one is on the Clarabelle Shift package. We see the 2 baby Clarabelles, the 2 big Clarabelles, and then, of course, we see Prince Phillips, and he's on 3 Prince Phillips and 3 Bonsai. So going into, the day one, I'm sure he expected a lot of red-blue because that's what you see in Europe. And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to be ready for them. So I'm going to have 6 quests for 2, 3 attack characters that are not easy to remove. And this is nasty. And I bet if we looked at his record, he probably had some good 2-0s against red-blue because if you drop, for example, a Cursed Merfolk into a Bonsai, into a Prince Philip, that's 6 lore on the board, and you can only answer the Cursed Merfolk. Like, that feels bad. Even your Grandma Tala that you play is going to trade into these guys. And meanwhile, you're getting that early lore. You still have your Goat bounce package. You still have your genies. You still have this Clarabelle that can come down later to gain you some nice health. And of course, the Go-Go. And I haven't mentioned the Go-Go much yet because that's just a staple in green-purple. The Go-Go is doing so much work, and we saw it do so much work. That ability to, I can play a goat and then quest with the goat. You trade into the goat, you take 4 damage. I play Go-Go next turn to then gain 4 lore. And what a beautiful magical thing to help close it out, because that goat essentially gained you, 1, 2, played it for 1, quested for 1, they traded into it for another, so there's 3, and then Go-Go comes down for 4, so you gained 7 lore off of 1 goat. Like, it's crazy how good Go-Go is. But again, a really good green-purple list, a very different one. This Prince Philip just coming in spicy with that ward, that 3/2/2 ward character, just a really good one and really good job. Next up, we have one of the green steel lists that made top 2, and not a lot to highlight here. It's a pretty typical green steel list, not a lot of difference, but the things that I did want to highlight is the Calhoun coming in, and I believe I think this is Wonderland's list, except he replaced the Doc for the Calhoun, and I'm a really big fan of this switch because that Calhoun, you play that Calhoun on 2, and your opponent's just kind of stuck now. Like, your opponent's just like, crap. Like, this is unfortunate because now if I quest, they're going to gain 2. They're going to clear. So unless it's like a bonsai, like, you're pretty much guaranteed to clear anything on their board, and there's a good chance the Calhoun lives to do it again to something else. So just a really good card that kind of stalls the game for green steel, so that green steel can come in, set up their Prince John, their Muses, their Ursula, and just then start doing their engine of discarding your cards and drawing their cards. And then, of course, the 3 hidden coves. And we knew that this number was going up. A lot of decks only ran 2 last set, and I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of 3s and 4s of hidden coves because it's so good into everything. And it turns that Diablo into a 3/3. So now when purple plays Genie, the Genie can't trade into Diablo. So it just slows everything down a little bit so that it gives green steel a little bit more time to get some hand advantage and do all the things that green steel wants to do. So top 16, I believe he lost to red blue in top 16, but really good showing, really good job. And finally, we saved the best for last. I don't care what any of you say. This is the best for last. We have Francis coming in with a top 16 with SteelSong. And this is a very spicy SteelSong. It looks a lot like Frank Karsten's SteelSong list in the sense that we see the 4 Simbas, the 4 Robin Hoods. We are bringing back that double shift line package that we saw in set 3 and a little bit in the beginning of set 4, where it used to be Robin Hood Queen. Now it's Robin Hood Simba. And when I was talking to Francis, if you looked at his stats, he 2-0'd 2 red-blue players, 1-1'd a red-blue player, and then on day 2, he went 1-2 into a red-blue player, and his match took a really long time. It went to turns, but the reason it took such a long time, and the next card he drew, there was a 25% chance that it won him the game, according to some people that were watching based off of what they saw and everything. So this list coming in and showing us that red-blue isn't the menace for SteelSong that it used to be. He 2-0'd 2 red-blue players with SteelSong, and that is really impressive because a lot of it has to do with you have the Robin Hood for all of all the purple decks or all the non-red decks, and then you have the Simba for all the red decks, much like what Queen used to do. But now Simba's coming in, giving us a little bit of extra abilities to ready things like Lilo and ready other things. So when we look at highlighted cards, of course the Simba, we do have the 1 dock. And if you look here, the 1 dock, and one of the biggest weaknesses of SteelSong is not seeing a whole new world. With that being said, a lot of the times Rapunzel does just fine, but when you're playing at the caliber, the level that these guys are playing at, when you make top 16, or even on day 1 when it's 96 people, these 96 people are people that won DLCs, and they're people that beat all these other guys in the last chance qualifiers. So you're playing against really, really good players. So the ability to get those Rapunzel heals is rather slim. So it's hard for you to count on those Rapunzel heals when they might not happen. We have the 1 dock to just kind of get ready for that. And when you run 4, 8, you run these 8 high cost uninkables in Simba and Whole New World, the dock can come in and kind of say, all right, you're never really going to get to play these. So it's better we play dock to just throw them away and then potentially get something new. Or you play dock if you have 2 Lilos in hand or 1 Lilo in hand. You play dock to discard the Lilo, and then next turn, you can just bring that Lilo back onto the field, even if exerted. And when we look at this, when we look at his stats across day 1, he did really, really well into red-blue, which worked out well for him because he played so many, but he didn't do so great into green-purple. In fact, he had one match that he just lost both games on the play and on the draw, went 0-2 against a green-purple deck. And a lot of that has to come down to, I would imagine, only having the 2 Ursulas and the 2 Zeuses. And even Purple Steel, he went 1-1 against, when normally Purple Steel is quite the... Oh, wait a second. So I messed up. But Purple Steel is normally quite the match for, or quite a really good match for the first SteelSong player. But where I said I messed up, there's no Ursula here. So when I was looking at this list and getting this video ready, I was thinking, how could I take this list and curtail it to possibly do really well into red blue, but also do really well into all these purple steel and green purple lists. And I thought maybe I can find a way to fit into Ursulas. So there is no Ursula here. None whatsoever. No Ursula. All right. And that, with that being said, that also does something really effective for him, in that he'll never draw Ursula into red blue, which is a really, really bad card into red blue typically. So because he doesn't need it for the Mauis, because he's got World's Greatest Criminal Mind. So he's just playing cards that he really likes to see, that are going to do really well and really effective when he's top decking or whatever else he's doing. So just a really good SteelSong list that made top 16, the only one to make top 16 out of 17, I believe, that showed up on day one. And just showing us that red blue is not the menace that it used to be for SteelSong. It just isn't. And it takes some of the right plays, but you can do it. You can also see the one where Francis went 1-1. It was on stream on day one, which is a video on the channel as well if you guys wanted to check that out. But that is all the lists. Excuse this mess up, couple typos, but excuse me, I wanted to get this out for everybody and show you guys that there is a lot of opportunity in the meta right now. Whether you want to run a purple deck, a red blue deck, SteelSong, aggro SteelSong, purple steel, more aggro purple steel, or versus more tempo purple steel, the options are endless. So this is just 11 decks to show you that. There are, some other... Check out InkDecks. All the lists on here are from InkDecks. So thank you everyone for sharing those lists with InkDecks and posting those for all of us to see so we can learn from you. But ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, what was your favorite list you saw? Let me know in the comments if you made it this far. But until next time, stay happy and healthy. Have a good one. Keep questing. I'm out. Bye.